Julia with siriustalesmoon. This is Mars, our Saturn day, and the moon is ingress to Capricorn, ruled by Saturn. So the sun is slowly approaching to square Neptune. We are after the new moon, and Venus is applying to square Saturn. What I'm seeing in the energy is there were multiple attempts to emulate obsession. What do I mean by that? Um, there were, how should I say that? The attempts to put people in pressure to create juxtapositions. Um, they bring out um, I talked about previously that bringing out the inner children in people, and two eurekas that came by. One, for most people, whether they're coming from cult-like elite lineages, okay, or extortion cults, or over the outside of that, for many people, relation is and familiarity. Um, how should I say that? There's something more, or the growth in relational pattern. Talked about safe and sane, or attachment, secure attachment um, in this economy. And I talked about the fact, and thank you so much, Anya Weck, that talks about how um, basically it, to infer from her the role of the therapist, psychologist, or relational consultant, um, and mind you, in many cases also the astrologer, very likely, in those circles would be to keep people in trauma, to interchange love that is the approximate of unconditional love with traumatic experiences. And that would maintain a supposed loyalty, a supposed gnosis of secret sacred, or and that would be what the trust would be. And I'm not just talking trust as trust within the people in these circles, but trust funds, the resources, the inheritance, the wealth consolidation, the succession of wealth. And so to have a love that is actually loving and wealth that is actually wealthy in the sense that um, the real thing, okay, not being attached to, how should I say that, particular manifestation of wealth. Um, Not if you think about the Gilded Age as the age where people begin to flaunt, and the counter reaction of the people that begin to anti-flaunt as flaunting their anti-flaunt, and the way that those more or less almost innuendos are expressed in these circles, um, and in society at large, I guess, um, they create a situation where, regardless of the social status of a person, to have a love that is actually loving and wealth that is actually wealthing and going with love, okay, not negating one another, both, all classes need to learn new form of relation. And so there is both the understanding of the intricacy of how relation was or formed in certain circles, and the understanding that to have, for many people, I'm not talking about like all people, but for many people to have what we really want in life, it is to grow a new form of relation, to grow out of the relational patterns of our upbringing. And when we think about relation, we think about what do people usually relate about? It's shared experiences, the the social cues that became so intricate and etheric almost that um, that are a part of the fabric of the soul. What happens when that was extremely abusive and cold-like? And when I say extremely abusive, I don't mean just abusive. I mean the interchange of. And some people maybe even want to stay in those. These are not the people that the episode is about. And yet, to grow out of these patterns, in many cases, is to change. I remember when I did etudes in Candle Flame, and I was reminded of the context of the original etudes and how the the while and just imagine how that affects our life because the connotations with etudes is is not something I can pinpoint, and yet it's not about reliving or those particular connotations that are different for different people. If you think about a musical composition, it connects and becomes a part of the fabric of the soul for people, also regarding the context in which they heard it, what happened at the time. Um, and our cultures are intertwined with those relational, whether artifacts, whether it's the design of the room, whether all the many things that affect our psyche, and how um, to actually have the relation or the love that we want is to is to bring a completely new form and meaning into the world that wasn't, as a culture that wasn't there before. Not in that sense, not in the sense of secure attachment, not in the sense of zero ritual abuse. And that's new. That's not wherever people are coming from, particularly this moon that was squaring Neptune. So it really accentuated the crisis of that which is missing is not met only by the past that was for either people, but a different third entity. And there's a saying, if I'm going to be extremely philosophic, there's a saying about love, that love is a third entity. And in a relational pattern, it's not a relational pattern of either of the two coming with. And if I ran into, when Uranus was around Beta Persei, and I did water expands upon cooling, a lot of the things I ran into was retrieval of pre-verbal emotional experiences. What I'm talking about right now is different. It is a new experience. For some people, not so. Perhaps for me it is new, and for other people that resonate is the opposite. And this crisis with Neptune, the way I experience it is the fact that if we are to love safely and sanely and authentically, neither of us, and I'm talking about not a mythical, but a metaphorical, okay? Because Neptune deals with the void and manifesting. So if we talk about the metaphorical us that is happy, sane, and safe, and compatible, and so on, that would be different to the relation that either of us had. And so we can't expect the type of relation that either of us would have with our surrounding culture, upbringing, or society. And all the things we've come to know as relation, they exist or they don't exist, but they weren't yielding and providing. It's something that's supposed to create and inspire those who are so inclined and let be those who are not, while understanding that we not completely lose, but we somewhat dissolve some aspect of relation of where our upbringing was, because it's those parts where we won't be able to partake, being authentic to who we are when we are safe, sane, happy, secure, and free, erotically and non-erotically. And again, I'm talking metaphorically. Of course, for those to whom it manifests as actual physical relationships, they may be ahead of me, okay, whether because they're able to see that or because it's there in their lives. Um, but for me, from my vantage point, I see it as metaphorical, and and that means a different type of relation altogether. For example, one threads of my upbringing was certain people that thought that, oh, if somebody is safe, sane, and loving, or if somebody is interesting, they're not safe, sane, and loving. Now, they had reasons to think that because the social context that they lived in was cult-like, or that they thought that to be interesting, they had to showcase something um, or perform. Um, but the but I intuitively knew that it's not the case. It's also um, there is authenticity, which is important, and then there is growth. There is what I actually would like to have, and if it's missing, then a part of that authenticity is to admit, hey, that is missing. Now, with Neptune, what is missing, sometimes we don't even know that it's missing until we run into that missing, or we run into that being met in ways that are hopefully adaptive but can be maladaptive. And the acknowledgement that, hey, that was missing is a pathway to manifestation of that existing in a way that is actually nourishing and healthy and safe and free. and the economy will have to adjust. Um, and so there was even a conscious and non-conscious attempt to try to invoke or create either the appearance of or an experience of limerence, obsession, or somebody thought or projected that somebody feels such way because that's all they knew that somebody can feel. They can be obsessed, or they can be in hatred, or they can be obsessed, or they can be not wanting. But there was not loving or centered in the sense that, well, I want a happy, safe, sane relation and free relation in my life, and and that and whether I have that with you or not is dependent on whether we both can want, experience, and enjoy safe, sane, free relation. Because if that's not the case, then I will have it with another person. and, and that's not something that people are authentically used to, and they try to emulate the non-existence of that notion by a system of pressures. And there is almost um, they're used to, what I'm seeing is somebody, either somebody or people that they're used to be pressured into a relation that they themselves have helped creating and showcase as um, the avoidant. I don't know, but but that doesn't work. They can't create that. They can't create that. And what I'm getting in the energy is that in this process of pressures, the gnosis about what is missing, or what um, or the awareness that a safe, sane, happy relation would be the new for both those who try to emulate a situation that they're used to. Um, it's almost like a musical. It's almost, if I talk about the tunes, it's almost like a musical that they're used to play the role to the tunes of, and something is off tune. And what is that off tune? Is that centered person that doesn't play to that show. And they're trying to, um, and the usual way to go about is the um, trying to control the relation in all various ways of, well, they're running into something that is quite centered. And I get the feel that if it was the other way around, they could either access or emulate the centered person, and something craves that, or they want to embody that level of centeredness, not as self-centeredness, but as centered, aware, is like able to have kind of like a eureka or a gnosis, or hey, I didn't realize that, or oh, wait a second, this is how viscerally it feels, that a relation that I'm safe, sane, and happy and free with would be new to me. But the paradigms around, and this is where the square from Saturn might be even, that the paradigms around were only playing to, if you think about people going to a concert or seeing an opera and emulating these type of relations, that's all they know. I talked about the erotic concept about that, because Neptune is eroticism. It's kind of like people either had whoredom, whoredom is pedophilia, marriage and marriage and whoredom within marriage, but they never actually had sensuality that doesn't play to those things. They or they had completely, divine love. Or shit ton of drugs and then shit ton of sex. But none of that sex was actually, it was approximations, not the actual sensual love that requires a relation, that is. And here we go from the sensual to the relation, and the relation was always playing to those mythical compositions. So much so that to live a safe, sane, happy relation, one would have to compose it into being and channel it from the ether. It's like, hey, where is it? I don't have the musical tune for that. If you think about the pianist trying to play a composition, and they're like, I can play that by ear, I can play that by memory, I don't have the notes for that. And even if you think about the Toots by Candle Flame, it was like, what, is that what I'm trying to say? Is that what am I trying to say with that flame theory composition? And that is alchemical, and there is no composition for that because amongst the elite where compositions were composed, though there were other type of relations in weird things happening that had to do with the wealth consolidation. And we are in shifting economy and changing economy, but I don't yet manage to get the thread coming from the ether into the composition, because it's like, even if I hold a candle, so it's kind of like, well, I composed the previous candles until something can grow here, is actually nourished, and that's one method. But I don't have the origin, because the origin was, I'm sorry, polluted by ritual abuse, and even the amaranth growing is after probably some time passed between babies being buried alive, so that somebody can build a city, or and and then there is a lot of, the flame is a lot of the composting of that into something that's not that. And that is both on the erotic, non-erotic, relational composition, artistic, mythic, religious, and of course economic, um, spirit and matter aspect. And the understanding that it definitely is new. It's not, how should I say that? It's not taking a composition and replaying to a composition. And in that case, Etudes in Flame Candle was a misleading name, because it's not that it's not writing on, or continuing the writing, or continuing the chapters of, and when I did my first channeling experiment in Spirit of Matter, um, it was about the Tower of Babel, but it always also was about, when we have the canon and we have the composition. The canon is changing because the canon up until now was children buried alive next to a dead child buried with a living child, and that was the death initiation, whatnot, into completely mind controlled, entity laden that would try to compose itself out of the ashes while being enslaved and being raped and drugged and having approximations of, and and that was our canon. And everything was a composition of the canon, but now the canon is shifting. And it's very weird to say the word canon because canon is both a canonical composition, but it's also, we're also at war. And yet, all that we've learned about attachment patterns, about authenticity, about sensuality, tantric connection, gender non-conformity, all these things, how should I say, the composition is right in itself. We're only 20 years from Pluto, from Pluto going back to Pisces, which is the mythical sign of where the big compositions were written, and and the composition is right in itself. It is already right in itself. It is already being created. And so, and that's something that is a different Neptune. It's not the unattainable Neptune, but the lived experience, not of the broken that was manufactured. Even compassion was manufactured because the broken was manufactured so that people will feel compassion. And the authentic and the helplessness was manufactured therefore. It doesn't mean that there's no cases where, okay, where we say goodbye to people and so on. um, but this is kind of the energy reading that I'm getting. It's like somebody was pressuring both someone and themselves to try to get the truth out, because if they put, there was a situation where if somebody is taking space from someone, they are being bombarded and attacked with people who try to force themselves on that person, and then they ran away into that person that tries to either, and it was and it seems like that person that they run to could be behind. Okay, could be creating that situation, whether consciously or unconsciously, and there's a dual effect around that, um, or that they try to understand what is happening, and the concepts they have to understand are only of the old world, but this is the new. And the responses of that person was being pushed into a certain situation where they don't know where can they be themselves, and that is the relation to that other person that didn't know where they can be themselves. And that was a part of the dynamic of extortion cults in some way. So, and from that, there is almost the breaking of the eggshell and birthing of, hey, that new, regardless of, and that new is not towards a person. That new form of relations that is safe, sane, happy, secure, free, and the economy and politics that fit that are already birthing. And it's from that cook pressure that it's true, the truth came out, but people expect the truth. It's like, somebody is obsessed about someone, and that's the truth. Somebody's this. But no, somebody, somebody wants a safe, sane, happy, free relation in their life, both with themselves and with the world, and none of those emulations is it for them. Okay, I'm talking about none of those things outside try to either push themselves on them or not honor their non-erotic self, or not honor their erotic self, or not honor the um, intricacy around them. None of that is suffice. And within that, there is also the study of someone, or it's more like there is a time where there is a certain juxtaposition, and it is dissolving many things that up until now one could dissociate from or to. Okay, that's a crisis with Neptune. Okay, basically. Okay, up until now we could dissociate, but with the crisis is the anomalies in response, the anomalies in relational response. Um, and the fact that it seems like somebody was juxtaposed in someone's axis, not by merit of anything than, as an astrologer, it could be like a Saturn transit. Okay, I have Saturn going through my first house, and then people that have like um, placements in my seventh house would have me juxtaposed to them. People that have ascendant in Virgo would have me juxtaposed to them. Or if I would go through Saturn in my seventh house, then I would have people not karmically in the sense of good or bad karma, but that would be like it's time, or the structure puts people, okay, 12 o'clock for me, um, that have this one to one relation or interaction. So, and those very intricate power structures, and we talked about the Saturn and Pluto, okay, because Saturn is sextiling Pluto right now. So we get the chance to understand more. Um, and there is a sense of helplessness because somebody is running away to a place where they should be running away from. Either they should really be running away from, or it's neither running away nor, but there is something that is the dynamic of, okay, think about, I'm sorry, but I'm going to talk about Mark the True. Mark the True used to kidnap children. Why would a child go with Mark the True if that child wasn't bullied to begin with? And here is almost like a situation where, I'm sorry, the child kidnapper would say to the child, leave me, while the other children bully them, and that child is running for safety in into a person that has a dead true like traits, okay? Or did they were like what they're like what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And then they would have other phases and other phases and other phases. So in neither that child nor that child kidnapper are able to move that dynamic anywhere around that doesn't birth, I'm sorry, either death or healthy relation. Those that escaped cults and abuse know what I'm talking about. And then there are those children bullying, or those other people bullying, or trying to oppress, or, and it's not even understandable if that was staged or not, but that was something that was enacting the ritual abuse settings, and that pertained to relational pattern. Because outside, the psychologist's job was to keep people into trauma. The psychiatrist's job was to drug people until they're back in the trauma. The welfare job was to put people back in a place where they would be even deeper in trauma. The bank's job was to take all the yielding assets so that they will never be able to come out of this trauma. the The occultist's job was to do all the magic of whether it's lust, whether it's confusion, whether it's whatnot that would keep the people in the trauma. And everybody around was orchestrating and playing the exact correct tunes for that musical composition. And there are two people juxtaposed where neither of them wants to be in that trauma. Okay, that's an energy reading that I've been receiving. And of course, when something triggers the sextile of Saturn and Pluto, the intensity around that is triggered. And that is an intense core change because, and that's the reason I talked about Detru, because that's what happened there. Okay, and that usually ended up with people buried, dead, and they were the decision makers about whether to go to war or not that were making those decisions, that were in those interactions. There was something about that interaction that was supposed to set somebody to go to war. It is a cycle. They want to induce a psychological state within decision makers that is going to funnel their energies, okay, somewhere. That was the point of it. And it was all about rituals of either people being buried alive or people not having freedom. The two people scrunched together and none of them wanting to harm the other person. And they just want to be safe and free. But everything is composed around them so that it would not be. And with the people that carry the signature, it can be even within themselves having these two people. And then there's a third party. If there's another one, there's a third party to the two people inside. But this is because we embody, just like children, we embody our parents, we embody those rituals. That was the point, that people would embody those rituals and that ritual abuse, and that would affect economy and politics. So I'm gonna stop that energy reading where it's at and light the freaking candle.